And if you want to be on the right side of right, rather than the wrong side of right, then you better wake up to the fact that you are propagating a lie for either your own personal gain or to enrage others for your own political and ideological advantage. And what you're doing is immoral, unethical, and is a stain on our country. That is not true. Stop saying it. It's false. So there are, unfortunately, a series of myths being used, myths about policing being used to push this defund the police, anti-police agenda, which I'll never accept. I'm not going to do it, and you're not going to pressure me into it. I don't care. I've said this repeatedly. I've made more than enough money. I've saved my money. I don't care about your boycott brigade. I don't care about any of it. All I care about is the truth. And I know you're on the other side of it. So we're going to tell the truth here. There's a fascinating article in the Washington Examiner. It's up in yesterday's show notes, but it's in today's too. Please check it out. Again, bongino.com/newsletter. Subscribe to my newsletter. That is the show notes. I'll send you these articles every day. This is a really terrific one that is sincerely worth your time. It's from the Washington Examiner. It says 4 Inconvenient Facts for Anti-Police Rioters by Jason C. Johnson. Let's go through each one of them because they're all worth your time. Folks, I'd say myth number, before I get to the screen caps from the piece, myth number 1, which I think we can all agree is being propagated by the left, is that there's some epidemic of use of force against citizens, specifically unarmed black males in this country. Are there instances, I'm getting tired of having to say this, but again, liberals are only interested in propagating and gaslighting false narratives and attacking anyone who tells the truth. So you have to give the obvious before stating the truth, because if you don't give the obvious, they'll accuse you of leaving facts out, which they do all the time. I'm not going to do that. There are obviously incidences of police use of force against people who are unarmed where the use of force was inappropriate. Period. We get that. And those issues should be handled appropriately, either through administrative action or criminal action against those said officers who have violated their code of conduct and potentially the law. We all get that. Every sane person, at least. But the myth that there is an epidemic of police shootings and use of force against unarmed black men, as if you have this army of occupying armed policemen and women in your village, your city, your town, your state, hunting people down, is factually nonsensical, embarrassingly nonsensical, and there is no data to support that at all. But you've been told that. You had this Minneapolis city council member, Lisa Bender, yesterday on the clip, suggesting that if your house is being broken into, the police showing up creates a greater danger for you. A comment so absurd, it's not a head scratcher, it's a head driller. You have to power drill into your head to clean yourself, to let it vent out of your skull so that it doesn't contaminate the rest of your neurons with that kind of stupidity. That's not true. There is not a mass epidemic of abuse of the use of force against the American citizen, specifically unarmed black men. What does the data actually say? I thought we were interested in science and data. No, only we are, not the left. Let's go to the article. Worth your time. Here's a fact. Fact 1, quote, Washington Examiner. Only about 2% of police-citizen interactions result in any use of force or even threat of force. This figure includes even minor uses of force, such as grabbing, pushing, and handcuffing. The overwhelming majority of these types of force result in no injury. Using this very broad definition of force in almost every arrest would result in a reportable use of force. Folks, think about what that just said. So leftist talking point versus the truth. Leftist talking point. There's a bunch of police stormtroopers running through your neighborhood with batons and firearms, randomly attacking men and women unarmed. It's an epidemic. Ladies and gentlemen, none of that's true. 98% of people have an interaction with the police, do so without any use of force at all. 2% result in a use of force. You may say, well, 2% are getting shot. No, that's not what that use of force means. That use of force even encompasses episodes where someone says, I'm not getting handcuffed, and you have to grab them and handcuff them, which in my experience in the 7-5, sadly was often. Still, even that Maybe that was because my area was pretty high crime. Even that is only 2% of episodes. Please stop lying. There is not an epidemic of police abuse of the use of force rampant throughout the United States. It's just not true. Again, but just keep saying it. It's not going to stop you from lying about it. Second, well, use of force clearly is rampant among, with the left. It's rampant. They're storming through the neighborhood, beating the snot out of everyone they come across. It's just not true. They're definitely shooting a bunch of people who are unarmed with no reason. Are they really? Again, what are you basing that on? I'm just asking a simple question. You basing that on data? You basing that on supposition? Or are you basing it on something you know is a lie and you're saying it because you want to leverage your own political advantage? I think we may be onto something there. Let's go to the actual facts about police shootings, engagements with a firearm. Fact 2, Washington Examiner. Fatal shootings by police officers are extraordinarily rare. About 0.0004% of police contacts and fatal shootings are declining. Let's get this straight. 0, 0, 0. Paul, did I read that right? 0, 0. Did I get all the zeros? How many zeros? 0, 4. So, thank you. It was, right? You can say, okay. I'm just double checking my math because we do facts here. I thought the left was into that. Nah. Tolerance, science, data. Yeah, that's us. That's not them. The science based on the data, if you're going to conflate data, it's not always the same thing. But the data says 0.0004% of police contacts result in some form of a discharge of a firearm. That seems to conflict. Again, leftist narrative. Police are rampantly shooting unarmed black men. That you're just making that up. Again, in a country of 330 million people with literally millions of police contacts a year, 911 calls, traffic stops, aided cases, emotionally disturbed people, you are always going to have some police officers in a population of hundreds of thousands of police officers and federal agents across the United States. You are going to have some who abuse this use of force continuum. We can deal with that. But suggesting it is a rampant shooting gallery and that cops are exiting the roll call with the intent to shoot unarmed black men is so nonsensical, you should be ashamed and embarrassed to look in the mirror and ever repeat it. And no one should ever be out there pressured to lie, to cater to a leftist rage mob, to advance their political agenda and not the truth. It is simply not true. Well, what about race? There's a leftist narrative there that clearly the police are definitely engaging in a higher proportion of use of force against black men, and race is almost always a factor. Again, is race sometimes a factor with some bad actors who may have had some tendencies to do things to people who are a different race? Unfortunately, it is. But what does the data say? Does that matter to you? Well, let's check it out. Fact 3. And let me caveat this, as the Washington Examiner does. Jason C. Johnson here. Though better data collection is necessary, let's be clear, multiple studies suggest that race is not a factor in a deadly force decision by police officers. Deadly force decisions, excuse me. What's more, only 8 out of 1,000 fatal police shooting incidents in 2019 involved individuals reported as unarmed black people. Keep in mind, the term unarmed does not imply that there was even insufficient legal basis for police to use deadly force. Only that media reports indicated the person was unarmed. 8. Should all those cases be evaluated? Of course. If there's evidence of abuse or use of force, should there be penalties? Potentially criminal or administrative, depending on what happened? Of course. 8 people? That is your epidemic of mass police violence? That's your evidence that we should stigmatize? Put the scarlet letter on the face of every single police officer around the country? You're basing that based on 8 cases in 2019? 8. All should be looked into. No doubt. 8 cases. You're suggesting all police officers are inherently racist. The whole system's broken. Police officers are hunting black men down, and you're basing that on data that says the exact opposite. And we're all supposed to fall in line. Why? Because you said so? And kneel before you? Literally, in some cases. Nah, not today. Not tomorrow either. Next week doesn't look good either. Either does next year or the rest of my life. I'll be dead before I kneel before you. I'm not kneeling before anyone. Subjugate yourself before the Almighty God, and that is it. I will kneel before no man, and you should neither. I spent time in policing. I'm not patting myself on the back, and please, this is not a self-praise moment. But if I may, quick establish bona fides. I said this to Paula yesterday, and I'll tell it to you. Spent 4 years with the NYPD and 12 years with the Secret Service. I didn't have one civilian complaint, not one demerit issued in the police academy, not one command discipline, and I was never, ever, ever the subject of any adverse action by the Secret Service ever. Matter of fact, I had multiple cash awards and left with a pretty high promotion score. I'm not trying to impress you. You paid me for the job, and I was proud to do it. I'm saying that because most of the police officers and agents I was with could tell you the exact same thing. And they find it grossly, disgustingly offensive that you're painting them as racist murderers hunting you down in the street, despite the fact that they work for relatively little money to keep your neighborhood safe. They go home to kids too. Your stereotypical labels of them, if you're engaging in that, calling them racist murderers, is disgusting filth, and you should be embarrassed. Finally, last one. There's another myth out there that shockingly continues, despite absolutely no evidence at all that this was ever true. We keep going back to the Michael Brown Ferguson scenario. Hands up, don't shoot. Ladies and gentlemen, that did not happen. That did not happen. Michael Brown and Ferguson's, his hands were not up, and he did not say, hands up, don't shoot. You will still see people saying this, again, to enrage others for their political advantage, not yours. Because they're going to use it to depolice your communities, to put you in danger, not me. Cops in my town ain't going anywhere. It's your town and your city. Fact 4 from the Examiner piece about this very subject. The Department of Justice, under President Obama, determined that the hands up, don't shoot rallying cry, popularized after the shooting death of Mr. Brown, was a manufactured narrative. The DOJ report further determined that Brown attempted to disarm the police officer and that the officer acted in reasonable self-defense. Again, don't let that get in the way of your narrative you're using to enrage communities. But that's the truth. And if you want to be on the right side of right, rather than the wrong side of right, then you better wake up to the fact that you are propagating a lie for either your own personal gain or to enrage others for your own political and ideological advantage. And what you're doing is immoral, unethical, and is a stain on our country. That is not true. Stop saying it. It's false.
You just heard The Dan Bongino Show. You can also get Dan's podcasts on iTunes or SoundCloud. And follow Dan on Twitter 24/7 @DBongino.